Well, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, wherever in the world you are, because we know we will have people dialing in from all over the world. And I'd like to welcome you to our November special webinar. And I'm super excited about today. There are two kinds of things that excite me when we're doing these webinars. And one is that kind of really big picture, take you out of your comfort zone stuff that I tend to do with my trends and things. But the other is when we're going to do really practical tips and tricks that you can walk away and your destination or your business can apply these and start to benefit almost instantaneously in terms of doing that. And that I can safely tell you is what we're going to get out of today. For those of you who've seen the post out on LinkedIn and wondering who the hell are you, I'm Carolyn Childs. I'm the CEO of MyTravelResearch.com, and this is part of our monthly service where we try and share that kind of really valuable content with you. A few housekeeping rules before I introduce our special guest today. The question that everyone asks, and I have put this in the chat box, is yes, we are being recorded. We are live and recording now, so that's all happening. The second thing is around questions and how we're going to deal with questions. Now, you will notice you're all on mute. That's for a couple of reasons. One, even if we've only ever got one or two people on the call, however quiet you think your background noise is, I can safely say that at the other end, often that little rustling of the cat or the dog in the background sounds like you're sat on the runway with the 747 taking off for the rest of us. The second thing is, obviously, if you've got lots of people on the call like we have today, what it can actually mean is that people forget and suddenly phone calls and things happen, so it's very distracting for people. So we do put you on mute. There is a questions box, so please feel free to answer your questions. When I hand over to Tamie in a moment, I will be monitoring the questions throughout the presentation, and if there's something that I think that you won't get benefit out of knowing the answer to before we move on, I will interrupt Tamie in order to ask those questions. But if I believe it's just something that we will either have answered later in the presentation or which we can answer at the end of the presentation, then at that point, what I will do is I will save them till the end, and we will try and deal with as many of those questions as possible. That's how we'll do that. We do have a chat box as well, so if you'd like to make comments rather than chat, please use the chat function to do that, because it just gives me a slightly less furrowed brow if I'm not trying to go through a lot of comments to get to the questions. So that said, I'm going to go to today's star presenter, and I'm really delighted. I've been hoping to get Tamie to come and chat to you. We've been meeting at conferences. We want to own up how many years we've been catching up at conferences before this year when I killed to catch up at a conference. And I've been saying, I must get you on to talk to people about what you do and some of the lessons that you've done. But maybe, I think, Tamie, that was for a reason, which is what you're going to talk about has never been more important than it is right now. I saw some numbers in the UK where 80% of travel agencies in the UK reckon they're going to run out of cash by Christmas. So right now, every dollar counts. I know it's a distressing number, isn't it? So I actually think this is the best of times and the worst of times to do this. And I'd really like to, you've got the bio on the screen, so I'm not going to talk through all of the details of this, but I do just want to pick out some highlights of what Tamie, who's the CEO of RevenYou, is bringing to this. So the first thing is Tamie, before doing what she did, she sat on your side of the fence. So she sat as an operator doing this and making the most dollars for the businesses that she worked in. And now she works predominantly in the accommodation sector. But as I said in the promotional, the emails out about this, I do really kind of think it's important that the lessons that Tamie has here, I reckon about what you say, 90% of them, Tamie, would apply to any destination, any tourism marketing organization. So whatever your background, you're going to get those. And the other thing I really like about Tamie's approach is she's not just talking about the knowledge, but the how of how she's going to deliver this presentation is informed by the fact that she has a teaching and education background. So she's going to make it super easy for you to run through this. So Tamie, welcome. I'm so excited we got you at last. I'm so excited we got you at the right time. I'm going to shut up now, as everyone is probably longing for me to do, and I'm going to take it over to you and switch my camera off. So Tamie, please take it away and talk to us about how to find those elusive dollars on the table.
Thanks, Carolyn. All right, I will take control now. As I said, my name is Tamie and I'm CEO of RevenYou, and today's topic is, are you leaving money on the table? So we're going to start today's presentation with just a few little questions for you to mull over as we go through. So number one, when did you last log in to your channel manager? So that might be SiteMinder, Allots, RMS, Lavat. When did you last log in and check it is working for you? When did you last check for those failed to deliver emails and fix them? When did you last check that the pricing you are putting in your PMS, that's the system you check people in and out of, is feeding out to your channel manager and feeding out to your OTAs correctly? When did you last meet with a market manager? Now, I know for those in the industry, there's been a lot of changes in market managers, but there are still people you can chat to, or you can ring the support line and ask to speak to someone. But when did you last sit down and speak to them and have a thorough conversation as to what is happening in your market and what trends they are seeing in your market and also the larger market, Australia or New Zealand, etc.? When did you last log into the OTA extranet? So when did you last log in and check that the rates you are sending from your channel manager are appearing in the extranet and they're feeding out to the customers correctly? That your photos are up to date, that you've ticked all the boxes you need to tick? When did you last play customer on an OTA? So I know we sit down at the extranet at the back end of all these systems and we do lots of changes. But when did you last log on as a customer and check that when you loaded those photos, they are loaded right and they're not loaded on an angle or sideways? How old is your website? So an old website is classed as a couple of years old. When did you last log into the back end of your website and make some changes? Google likes recent and relevant content. So if you are not constantly updating your website, Google's going to think it's old. Are the photos that your customers are seeing clear or blurry? The OTAs are constantly updating the requirements, and they look for good quality, high resolution photos. But have you checked that the photos you took on your iPhone that looked really great on your phone, how do they look when on a desktop? When did you last update your meta search? So meta search is things like TripAdvisor, Google My Business, Trivago, Hotels Combined, Kayak. Have you claimed your listing and updated it so that you are putting your best foot forward, so that the customers are seeing the best content you want them to see? And as a final question, when did you last increase your pricing? Now, I know for some of you, it is not possible right now to increase your pricing, but I also know for a lot of different parts of Australia, it is possible to increase your pricing. We do not, as hoteliers, want to appear greedy, but can we increase our pricing just a little bit? Okay, so a hotel is a business. I know we focus a lot of our time on a hotel as a customer service. It's all about our TripAdvisor reviews, our Google reviews. It's all about things like smile from 2 meters when you greet a customer, or answer the phone within 3 rings. But actually, a hotel is a business. And do your staff understand what goes into running a business? Now, I can quite honestly say that I've worked in hotels for a very, very long time. And it wasn't until I started out on my own about 5 years ago and started working with owner operators that my attitude started to change. And when I was pricing the hotel, I started to take into consideration things like rent and utilities and staff costs. And I started to change my attitude about, I need this much money in the bank account at the end of the month to make this business profitable. I must have an active pricing strategy in place to ensure I am achieving that little pot of gold at the end of the month so we can pay bills. Have you had that conversation with your staff? Do they understand what goes into a P&L and what makes up profit? It's not all about good reviews on TripAdvisor. We need to make a certain amount of money in our businesses every month. And do you share that information with your staff? Okay, so first today we're going to look at distribution. Now, distribution is the act of sending your pricing out to market. So every year, SiteMinder issues a list of the top 12 channels in Australia. They use all the data going through their system to compile this list and tell you which are the top revenue producing channels in Australia. Now, even if you are not a customer of SiteMinder, you need to get hold of a copy of this list. The reason you need to look at it is SiteMinder is the biggest channel manager in Australia, and so it's got one of the most accurate data pools. Once you've got the list, you need to look at the top 12 and decide whether you are listed on all of those channels. And if you are not on those channels, why not? So for example, in number 9, you have Lido. Now, if you're a small little property in Warrnambool, you may not get any Queensland government business. And therefore, listing on something like Lido is not necessary. If you are the Langham Hotel in the centre of Melbourne, you sure as hell are not going to be listed on Hostel World Group. But you would probably want to be on AOT Group because it specialises in Australian government business. You need to make sure that you are analysing this list and reviewing it every year to ensure you are listed on the appropriate channels. When you are deciding which channels to list on, you need to understand what niche market that brings to your hotel, who are their customers, and are these customers that you want? So for example, I give you the beautiful hotel in the Maldives. We can all picture that hotel that's with villas that sit on 4 pillars over the ocean. It is perfect for honeymoons. Now I ask you, should they list on Lido and AOT that specialise in government business? Probably not. But maybe there's a different niche that they need to be listed on. So with your property, go through the exercise of making sure that you are connected to the channels that are going to bring you business that you want and is going to give you a good return on investment. OTAs. We've all heard and taken part in that conversation. I hate the OTAs. They take all that commission. They do nothing for it. They steal all my business. I really don't like them. I want to turn them off. Well, guess what? The OTAs are your yellow pages. You need to be on the OTAs because that is where your customers find out that you exist. The customer journey starts with the OTAs. That is how they know you exist. And if you are not there, how are they going to find you? So customers will have a look on the OTA and then they will go to your website. And your responsibility as the hotel owner and manager is to ensure that you capture them when they are on your website. Your responsibility is to ensure that your listing on the OTAs is optimized so that they go to your website and they book you while they are on your website. So there is no excuse. Make sure you are on the OTAs. And while you're on the OTAs, learn how to use them better. The OTAs spend a lot of money researching what turns a customer from a looker into a booker. And they are very, very good at this data analytics. They know exactly what makes a customer want to book. And they have made it easy for you as a hotelier because they give you a page score. And that page score guides you to make sure your listing is optimized. So for example, the hotel on the right, which only has 88%, they need to review their listing and get it sorted. So their property amenities are very good. They've got 100% there. Room amenities, there's one that needs to be reviewed. You need to be logging into your extranet regularly because the OTAs are adding new areas all the time. So for example, over the last 6 months, they've all updated their amenities to include information on COVID. They have identified what customers want to know, and they've added tick boxes for you to update. Policies and deposits are really important because customers need to book with confidence. They need to know that if their plans change, what is going to happen. And photos. Photos are so incredibly important because as a species, we are incredibly visual. We look and we learn. So for example, if you're looking at a photo for myself, I would look at the photo and I'd go, okay, there's a queen size bed or there's a king size bed. There's a fridge in the corner. There's a desk and that chair looks really nice and comfortable to work at. There's space for my bags. There's a bathroom. Oh, that bathroom looks recently renovated. Oh, look, there's an aircon up on the wall. There's tea and coffee facilities. I can put a cold drink in the fridge. I am learning so much from a photo. I am learning far more from that photo than I would from reading all the information that is underneath that photo. So your photos need to tell a story. And the story they need to tell is that they're clear, they're high resolution, and they are good quality. To get a photo shoot done, it costs between $1,000 to $2,000, depending on how many photos you need taken. And you might want to, if you're in a regional location, reach out to a real estate agent and ask them who they recommend to take photos. Because real estate agents are used to making million-dollar properties look great. So they know photographers that can make a room look good. But your photos need to be professional because there's a difference between the photo that you took on your iPhone and the one the photographer took and edited for you. They can make those crinkles in the sheets go away. They can make that power cable go away. They can take out the reflections in the mirror and they can make your photos look great. Price quality score. I hear a lot of negativity about price quality scores, but a PQS is actually the result of revenue managers doing a really bad job. Once upon a time, we would send a special offer to one OTA and forget the others. We would deliberately price each OTA differently because they had different commission levels. Well, that got the OTAs a bit narked, and they introduced PQS scores to make us do our job better. You need to make sure that your PQS on booking.com is above 70% or is good on Expedia. You need to keep it there. So your responsibility is to check this and keep it good. Because I will tell you that once you drop below good or 70%, it is very, very hard to get back up. So if you are doing a promotion on one OTA, copy it across all OTAs. If you are going to set up a rate plan on one, set it on all. You need to be checking often. And a tip, use an incognito window on Google and then use the Google listing to check your pricing for today, tomorrow, a few weeks time, a few months time, for one night stays, a few night stays, but use an incognito window. If you don't know how to get to an incognito window, go to the 3 little dots in the top right-hand corner of your Google page, click the drop-down box, and you will see New Incognito Window. Once you're in, your screen will turn black, and this is how you override cookies. This is how you see as much of what a customer sees as possible. It's not 100% foolproof, but it is the best we can do. Guest reviews. Guest reviews have become even more important in recent times. They say that about 98% of customers will read a review before they book. And reviews have gone beyond just TripAdvisor. The OTAs all now offer a review function, and Google offers a review function. You need to be looking at your reviews and analyzing them. And the OTAs offer you analytics on your reviews. And as an owner or manager of a property, you should be looking at these analytics at least monthly or quarterly, because the analytics will help you formulate a plan on renovations, on budgets, and on where to spend. So for example, the property on the left-hand side, only 50% of their customers are happy with the Wi-Fi. That means 50% of customers leave that hotel unhappy with the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is one of the 3 most important things of any hotel stay. We say now that bed, shower, and Wi-Fi are what customers need. So if your Wi-Fi is not performing, you need to get it fixed. Or as one of my clients told me the other day, he runs a service department hotel on the northern coast of New South Wales. And he now has customers arrive at his hotel, ask him if he has rooms available, and when he says yes, they pull out their mobile phone and they do a speed test on the Wi-Fi. If the speed test comes back okay, they check in. If it doesn't, they leave. So he has just spent a lot of money upgrading his Wi-Fi, because as he told me the other day, he had a QC from Sydney all robed up, sitting in the apartment, doing what QCs do in his board shorts. But he could do that because his Wi-Fi was good, and that QC stayed with him for a few months over lockdown. So you need to be looking at your reviews and analysing and working out where you need to fix, what needs to be improved. So for example, the bed, only 11% of customers were happy. What do you need to do? Do you need to improve and order new mattresses, or do you need to add pillow toppers? What do you need to do? Make a plan. Marketing. So marketing is the act of delivering your product with a price to the customers. The OTAs, as I said, are very, very good at what they do. They are very good at identifying what turns a customer from a looker into a booker, and they know things like sale works. Just think of your behaviour when you last went to Coles and you walked down the aisles and you saw all those price drop labels, all those yellow sale tags. They caught your attention, didn't they? And you probably purchased the product. It's exactly the same on the OTAs. You need to take part in these offers, but you do not have to give every single room and every single date to the offers. I worked with a property for a few years that had 6 standard rooms, and these standard rooms measured about 18 square meters, so they were very small. They were ideal for the single corporate traveller, because a corporate traveller only comes with a small wheelie bag. They were not ideal for leisure guests or couples who bring bigger bags. So what we used to do is we would exclude the standard rooms from all promotions. That meant we forced people into booking the bigger room types, that we got better reviews around. So we had much happier guests that went away and talked about how great the property was. And we left those 6 standard rooms for the corporate traveller who booked on the day or the day prior and were quite happy with the room, and off they went again. So you don't have to put everything into the promotions, but do take part, because taking part helps your conversion, which helps your ranking. Conversion on the OTAs is based on, your ranking on the OTAs is based on your conversion. So if you're not converting clients and making commission for the OTAs, they're not going to put you on page 1. And 80% of bookings are made on page 1. Analytics. Your PMS, your channel manager, your OTAs, they all provide analytics for you. Some of it you need to ask your market manager for, or you need to ring the support line or email them and ask them for it. Some of it, like Booking.com and Expedia, you can get yourself. But if you do not know what to do with these analytics, reach out and ask. Now, as a person who makes reports on a daily basis, I actually have more respect from the person who is brave enough to ask me, Tamie, what does this mean? And then I get to talk for hours about numbers and explain exactly what it all means, because this is what I love to do. So don't just read a report and go, I don't know what that means, but I'll put it on my desk and I'll deal with it later. You need to understand your analytics, because your analytics are going to help you make a plan for what to do with your business in the future. You need to use your analytics to decide what pricing you need to put in place, what changes you need to make to your property. Are you pacing according to the competitors, or are you behind? How do I need to change my behavior? The analytics are free, so use them. Check them regularly. Some of them you do have to check regularly because you can't date range them. So if you want a monthly report, you have to look on the first of the month. But as I said, if you don't know how to read them and plan around them, please reach out and ask. Your website. Paying for a new website is not the magic pill to increase direct bookings. Just because you went and brought a sparkly new toy doesn't mean that you are suddenly going to get inundated by direct bookings. Number one, your website needs to be of a decent quality. A website is not where the cheapest is the best. You need to invest in a good website. And having worked with many hotel owners, I can say a good website usually starts at around the $3-4 grand mark. Your content on your website must be recent and relevant. Google does not like a website that is launched and forgotten about for the next 10 years. That website will quickly drop in ranking. There is a saying amongst people who work around websites that the best way to bury a dead body is to put them on page 2 of Google. So if your website is not on page 1, you've got a problem. SEO, AdWords, hotel ads. If you want to invest in these, you need to find someone who knows what they're doing and have a conversation with them around what is an adequate budget to invest. And the reason I say adequate is because I've spoken to some hotels and they go, yes, Tamie, I put $200 to AdWords every month. And it's like, well, what do you get in return? $200 is a drop in the ocean. Whereas they could take that $200 and invest it in something that is going to provide a decent ROI. And they need to speak to their provider and have that conversation around, I only have $200 to spend. Where is the best place for me to put it? And if you're suspicious of what you're being told, reach out to different suppliers and get different quotes. Bidding on terms. Make sure you are bidding on terms that the OTAs aren't. They have a lot more money than you. So you need to look for niche terms to bid on, things that they're not looking at, because then you will get better return on investment. Your booking engine. You do not need to go with the booking engine that is recommended by your PMS or the one that you get with your PMS or your channel manager. Shop around for booking engines. Have a play on Expedia and Booking.com and see how easy it is to make a booking. Then go back to your booking engine and decide if it is just as good. And if it isn't, find a new one. High resolution photos. Photos sell. We are a visual creature. We need to look, we need to see, and your photos need to be good quality. Analytics, we've just talked about that. You must, if you launch a website, put your Google Analytics on that website. You need to understand how customers get to your website. What is the journey through your website? Where do they leave your website? And what do they not use on your website? And the reason I say what do they not use is because if they are not looking at a page on your website, it is because it's not necessary, it's not desirable. So get rid of it and replace it with some other information that customers do want. Use the analytics. You need a revenue strategy. And the reason I say a revenue strategy is that the strategy on your direct website is most likely going to be different to the strategy for OTAs. You must remain in parity, but you may only choose to give your special offers, your bed and breakfast, your dinner bed and breakfast, your balloon package, whatever it is, you may choose to only give that to your direct website. That is fine. You just need to make sure your flexible rate or your lowest price is in parity with the OTA. Social media and EDMs. A lot of people ask me, why do I do that? Well, it's because I want to have a constant funnel of people heading back to my website. By having people on social media or sending people EDMs, I am getting them to click through links and come to my website. So visitors to my website make Google think my website is important and it is good and it will increase my ranking. If people aren't visiting my website, Google's going to forget about it and I'll drift down to page 2. Spell check. Please, please, please spell check your website. Customers judge you on what you put on your website. And if you have spelling mistakes, they will be judging you. And I say that as a person who cannot spell. Make sure you use your word spell check. Check what you're putting on there. Make sure it's right. Phone and email. Phone and email are just as much a part of your direct booking strategy. For a while there, we got a bit lazy as hoteliers and we thought everyone was booking online. Well, one of the most interesting trends that we've noticed over COVID is hotels are seeing an increase in phone bookings. So direct bookings are going up. And we want to encourage that and reward it. So we need to make sure that the person answering the phone is trained to sell. They are not the cheapest monkey you could find at the zoo. They are the best one that you could find. And you need to invest in them. You need to make sure they are trained in selling. And I'll give you an example. Hi, my name is Tamie. Oh, you want a room for tonight? Okay, it's $150. Would you buy from that person? Or would you buy from this person? Hi, my name's Tamie. You want a room for tonight? Excellent. Okay, we've got a couple of rooms left. I've got one with a balcony. Now you can watch the sunset from the balcony with a lovely cocktail. That will be $200 for tonight. Or we've got one of our standard rooms. Now that comes with a queen bed and ensuite bedroom, not the balcony though, and that will be $150 for tonight. Which would you like to book? Who are you going to buy from? It's the difference in training. And if you're not sure how good your staff are at answering the phone, do some mystery calls to check. Now, once upon a time, I worked at an IHG property in London, and we have to provide an hour of training per staff member per month. So I cottoned on to a quick way of doing this. I would get my staff to call other hotels. I would give them a requirement. I want a Christmas brochure. I want to book 3 nights. I want to book for tomorrow. And I would get them to ring our competitors, or they could pick different properties. But each time they rang, they had to come to our team meeting and report back on the phone calls. They learned far more from mystery calling other hotels than I could have ever trained into them, because they would come back and tell me things like, oh my gosh, Tamie, I rang that hotel and they said they were going to send me a brochure. And I'd be like, did you get it? No, they never asked for my email address or my postal address. So I don't know how they're going to send it to me. And I'd then go, what have you learned from that? And they'd be like, we need to make sure we get an email address. And they learnt far more from mystery calling other hotels than from me ever teaching them. Chatbots. If you're a small independent hotelier, you cannot be on your phone 24/7. So you might want to invest in a chatbot. But when you invest, make sure it's a chatbot that can be trained. Make sure it's a chatbot that will produce reporting on what questions it couldn't answer each day, so that you can constantly train it so that it keeps learning and developing, and it does work for you. And the reason I say chatbots is some people just don't like picking up the phone, but they will hop on a keyboard and they will send you questions. Parity. So whatever pricing you have on the OTAs and on your direct website must be available for the staff to sell over the phone, because people will have looked online before they pick up the phone and call you. Do you have sales and marketing staff on the road? People need to know about your hotel, so you need people out there talking about your hotel. When did you last invite the local RTO or corporates in for a drink so they could see your hotel? You need to be running for meals so people know about you. You need to be advertising your product. No one will pick up the phone and call if they don't know about your product. And I don't mean advertising in a newspaper. I mean getting the word out that your property exists. Loyalty. It is 10 times cheaper to keep a loyal customer than it is to find a new customer. So how do you look after your customers? The person who rings you and goes, hey, Tamie, can I get my room for tonight? How do you look after them? How do you make sure they feel rewarded and valued? And what incentives are you giving your staff and your customers to come back? So staff get paid a wage to do their job, but how are you pushing them to improve? So I don't mean giving them an incentive to book 10 reservations. I mean giving them an incentive to book 10 reservations at such and such ADR for such and such length of stay, or for a specific room type. Push your staff to go that extra mile. Trends. Trends are really changing at the moment, and is your website, your offering, and your staff, are they changing with the trends? So you might have heard of this little thing that's going on at the moment. It's called a pandemic. It is changing the way in which our travellers behave. They are no longer getting on planes, but they are getting in their car and they are taking road trips. They are coming to us via a different means of transportation. And that means they need to know about car parking. They need to know your address for their sat-nav. They need to know what other attractions there are on offer beyond just the ones in your city block. They are behaving very differently. Baby boomers, they are the ones that have money to spend right now. And please don't fall into the trap that baby boomers do not know how to use a mobile phone or social media. They are online more than you and I because they have time and they have money to spend. Does your website sell the experience of staying with you? So for example, I am the mum of an 8-year-old. When I look to take her on holidays, I am looking at what sort of things there are for her to do. Because no matter how much she loves me and I love her, we both get a bit bored with each other after a while. So I would look at that photo in the top right-hand corner and go, oh, swimming pool, kids playing. Maybe there'll be other families there. Maybe there'll be a kids club. Maybe there'll be some other kids she can play with. But gosh, those kids look to be having fun. Let me find out more about that hotel. Contactless everything. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you've got a QR code that goes to their room service menu. A, this means that you don't have a menu in the room cluttering up and that needs to be cleaned. But B, it is allowing you to change your room service menu as often as you want because you're only typing it into the back end of the QR code. So you can add specials of the day. You can take items off that aren't performing. And mobile everything. About 50% of bookings are coming through on a mobile. So when was the last time you checked your website and your booking engine and made sure it was mobile friendly? Quick wins. Okay, as hoteliers, we know that we will have peaks and troughs. We will be busy and quiet, and there are certain days of the week where we are quiet and certain periods of time where we are traditionally quiet. Traditions are all changing at the moment, but you all know what I mean when you're the city centre hotel and you are traditionally quiet over Christmas. You need to test and retest what works in the busy times so that you have a hit list of special offers to run over the quiet times. It's no point in testing over the quiet times because you don't have enough people booking to give you some accurate data. You need to find out whether investing in AdWords is a quick way of increasing occupancy or whether offering a free bottle of wine is going to turn that looker into a booker. Is it that you should be investing in marketing to tours and groups to fill your off-peak, or should you be advertising on the GDS? What is going to work for your property? When will it work? And who will it work for? You need a hit list. Test now so that you have that information when you really need it. Customer journey. Okay, so do you understand how a customer goes from being a looker and arriving at your hotel? So dreaming about a holiday. Now I'm located in Melbourne. I've been locked down pretty much since about the middle of March. I have been dreaming about a holiday since March, but a lot of tourism, hotels and activities stopped investing in marketing. That was a bit of a silly mistake on their behalf. I know they needed to conserve cash, but all of us Melburnians were online dreaming. We were looking for inspiration on where to go. So dreaming can start anywhere from a day before they arrive at your hotel through to about 6 to 12 months before arrival. So you need to understand your customer journey. When do people start dreaming about coming to your location? Because that's when you need to be investing in. Planning. This is when people start shortlisting. They start looking on the OTAs and comparing specific properties. What is your footprint like on the OTAs? Whereabouts are you marketing your property? Are you owning this journey? Are you making sure that you are where your customers are looking? Booking. So that's actually choosing you and putting the credit card in. So how are you marketing yourself to people who are about to put their credit card on the table? Anticipation. They have booked, but now they're getting ready to come. This is not time to forget about your customers. This is the time to make sure you are investing in building a relationship with your customers. So last year, I had the luck of visiting one of my clients down the Great Ocean Road. Now, a couple of weeks before I was due to go, they sent me a PDF pack, and it was about 10 to 15 pages long, And in there, it told me all the important information I needed. Now, they know that about 80 to 90% of their customers come from Melbourne. So within this pack, it told me really valuable information like the last supermarket before you arrive at us is located here. They're self-catering, so people need to buy their own food. The last petrol station, the last alcohol shop. All of these places were listed in the pack. And the pack even told me about the last toilet to visit or the best toilets to visit. It also told me about the waterfalls and the attractions and the best places to stop for photos. It had it all in there, and it made it incredibly easy for me. But when I got in my car and I was en route to the location. We used to think about the travel to our destination as plane, but right now it's by car. So how does your website make sure that customers have all the information they need to get to you? And the most important one is, what do they program their sat-nav with? Is your address easy to find? The destination. Now, 80% of customers will book additional things once they're on site. And this And one example I would give you is something like arriving at your hotel in Bundaberg and wanting to know what time the tour goes for the turtles at Monrepos. So me as a mum, I would turn up at reception and I would ask the receptionist, what time do I need to be there? If the receptionist doesn't know, they've lost me as a customer. If the receptionist does know, they're going to tell me something like, sunset is at X time tonight, you need to be there by Y time, and you can buy tickets from us. It's the same price, but you get to skip the queue. So when you get there, you go down the right hand side, you go to the counter which says ticket holders, and you go straight through. So as the mum of the 8-year-old, I'm going to love that receptionist, because she just meant my 8-year-old did not have to stand in a queue for half an hour. So what are you offering your customers once they arrive on site? Post-holiday sharing. It's actually even more important to make sure that you've wowed your guests, because once they get home, they're going to become your new salespeople. They are going to share online about your hotel, and you want them to be sharing a really good story about your hotel. You want to have given them your hashtag so that they can share photos about you. You want to be making sure that they've got somewhere that is Instagram worthy within the hotel to take photos. You want to make sure you're encouraging them to share photos and to share via word of mouth their wonderful experience with you. And thank them for sharing those photos. If someone does share a photo with your hashtag, hop on there and say, thanks, we're really great you enjoyed your stay. That will encourage them to come back again. Okay, so today I'm going to set you a little bit of homework. I'd like you to take a screenshot of this, because once you get back to your desk and you've got 5 minutes free, I would like you to sit down and try and book a hotel room for your hotel on an OTA of your choice and on your own website and via the phone. So you have to repeat this process 3 times. Now, you need to book for 2 adults and 1 child. So I'm going to throw a spanner in the works. You need to take a child with you. So it's just going to make it a little bit more difficult. And you are booking for 2 nights. You need to find answers to these very simple questions on the right. What are the check-in and check-out times? How much for the roll-away for your child? How much is Wi-Fi? Is there a hairdryer in the room? What is the review score? I'm arriving after 8 o'clock at night, so how do I check in? How much is breakfast? Where do I park? And can I do my laundry? Is there any incentive to book direct? And what are the terms and conditions? You need to do this for your hotel on an OTA, on your own website, and via phone, because you need to check how are you selling your property. And if you're brave enough, ask a friend who knows nothing about your property to repeat this exercise and watch them. And the final thing, you can only do this on your mobile phone. You cannot do it on a desktop. You must do it on a mobile phone, because remember, 50% of bookings come via a mobile phone. And for some hotels, it's even higher than that. So I want you to do this exercise, because it will shine a light on where you are missing out. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. So just a little sales pitch. One of the things that I do for a lot of hotels is a full online distribution audit. I look at your PMS, your channel manager, your OTAs, your meta search, your Google, your website. I look at everything and I give you some ideas on what you're doing well, what you need to improve, and what you need to start doing. So for those listeners today, there is a 20% discount. You do, my contact details are there for you to reach out. And what I'll do now is I'll hand back to Carolyn so that we can go through the Q&A.
Brilliant.
Carolyn,
Thanks for that, Tamie. Can you see me and hear me now, I hope? Hopefully you can see and hear me, because I can see him. I can see and hear myself.
Excellent. I can hear you.
Go. Perfect. I think there are a lot of people out there doing a lot of talking on a lot of Zoom calls at the moment, because I'm guessing the bandwidth is quite constrained. Tamie, thank you so much. That was really, like, my brain is slightly exploding. There are so many. The devil literally is in the detail of revenue management, isn't it?
It is.
Now, I guess I'm going to use that little task you set everyone. Because one of the things that occurred to me is, if you look at each individual detail, often it can just feel like common sense. But one of the things that I found over the years is you can never assume that common sense is that widely applied. So when you're taking people through this test, or some of the other tips and tricks you shared with us, the first time you work with someone or on that distribution audit, roughly what percentage of the time do you find that people are doing, more than 90% of what you've told them to do here before you go through it with it?
So what I find is I give them the distribution audit, and the biggest reaction is, I didn't know all this.
Yes.
About 5 to 10% of my clients choose to go away and do all the spring cleaning themselves. The rest of them realize they do not know and they need help. And that's when we step in and help them fix it all up. But by doing the fixes, the spring cleaning, they do notice an increase in bookings. So the audit works hand in hand with a revenue strategy and, of course, a sales and marketing strategy. But it helps. It's a starting point. It really helps them to go through everything that they thought they were doing well and make changes.
Brilliant. Thank you. Now, I noticed we did, and I'm sure you've had this experience when you've talked on this before, Tamie, we did lose a few people when you said, don't look at the OTAs as your enemy. And I'm not surprised by that. I guess what was a real big takeout for me is some of those little tips and tricks around the idea of, if you're going to do it, it's about strategically managing it, and some of those tips coming through. But one of the very practical questions for me, you talked about this ability to be able to increase prices, and when you can and when you can't. So I guess, that's one of the things I often find people are quite nervous, particularly at the moment, about increasing prices, or they tend to go the other way and suddenly they're swamped, they've got high demand. So they're suddenly taking a property that might have been $150 and it's gone to $250. What are any tips and tricks about how much to raise it, how to feel where to raise it, any ideas or tips of stuff around that for people?
So I'll give you an example. I started working with a property in regional Queensland a few years ago, and they told me our price is $145 a night. And I went, okay, when did you last increase that? Not for a long time, because every time we put it up, customers stop booking. And I'm like, okay, how much do you put it up by? And they went $10. So they were moving from 145 to 155, and that was shocking their customers. Because what you've got to think is, as a customer, they go online and they go, oh, last time it was 145, this time it's 155. Oh, I'm going to shop around. Whereas what we actually did with that property is we started very subtly moving at 145 to 146. So their customers who have been regular clients for so incredibly long were like, nah, it's only an extra dollar, whatever, I'll just pay it. But what they didn't realize is that one extra dollar became two, became three, became four. And within a year, we had got to the extra $10 just by being very slow and steady about it. You also need to make sure that your pricing reflects the product you are offering. So if you are going to increase your pricing, you need to pay very close attention to value for money. And a lot of the OTAs will give you insight on this in their review scores. So if you are putting your prices up, it's okay to go, wow, Noosa, Byron Bay, incredibly busy at the moment. I'm going to double my prices. But if your product does not back that up, you are going to get slammed in guest reviews and people will stop coming or they will not come again. So every product has a benchmark at which point people will walk away. And part of being a revenue manager is finding that point where people stop booking. And that's where we know we've got to stop and we've got to review our product and then we've got to improve our product. And it might be by adding something into the product, but we've got to find that point because you want to maintain your occupancy, but increase your pricing.
There's a lot of trial and error and trial and don't just sit there and set it, trial and repeat. And I definitely, as someone who conducts experiments for a living, which is what research is, I'm definitely there. But just as a matter of interest, Tamie, that $1 a night, did you find you lost any guests at all by that?
No.
Okay, I've just done it. The reason I was looking down and being so rude is I've just done a quick calculation on the basis that if you manage to sell every single room for that $1 extra in a 30-room property for a year, that would be, with no cost, $10,950 in your bank account. So that is each month, that is an extra almost $1,000 a month for nothing in your account.
And it doesn't sound like much. So we actually got a bit of pushback from the staff who were like, nah, our customers won't like this. We've always sold at 145. And what we actually said to the staff and how we sold it to the staff so they bought into this process of increasing the pricing, we were selling it to them as one extra dollar is new TVs in the rooms. Or one extra dollar is another staff member we can afford to employ so that we are sharing the workload. Or one extra dollar is us putting in the new beds that people have been complaining about. So it's only small incremental amounts, but you've got to get your staff to buy in and of course your bank account and your bank manager is going to love it as well.
Yes, and I think, I look, as I said, when we started talking about this webinar, it kind of, for me, every dollar counts right now. And I listen to that and I think about a business that lost nothing and suddenly $10,950 on the table for such a tiny change. I'm actually thinking I might go away and raise the price of our product from 97 to 98 just to see what happens. And because
the other thing that you need to remember with pricing is don't get trapped. So we all know that $99 is a really good, and psychology says people will buy at $99. But a lot of hotels, a lot of suppliers get trapped in that 99. And what we need to be very careful with as revenue managers is that we don't leave our pricing the same for a long period of time, that we don't get trapped into the 99. And we use all the other numbers in the numerical system because there's between 1 and 10. So you can mix it up and have 98s, you can have 96s, you can have 94s. Use all different numbers, but make sure you don't get trapped. Because if you're wanting to go from 99 to 102, that psychologically is a massive leap. You've got to keep pushing, you've got to keep changing. And the other one to consider is when are you going to do your price changes? So with each hotel, there is a time period where you can subtly slide in a price change. And is it during a really busy period? For example, in Melbourne, we used to slide price changes into the tennis, and when people came back to Melbourne after the Christmas holidays, and we'd slide the change in there. Not on the 1st of January, because the first 2 weeks of January were very quiet. We would mask the price change at a very busy time. So the pricing went up for the peak period, but it only came back down a certain amount.
Okay, there's a lot of anchoring of pricing there, and I think people kind of get, if there's a small price increase, would you say they kind of get it at a busy time? It's just if it's a big, and we've heard these tales, as I said, of people price gouging right now, whereas kind of small change would make that difference. Now, one question that did kind of come in was this: you mentioned getting hold of the SiteMinder list.
Yes.
How do you do that?
It's either on the SiteMinder website, or it gets released on a lot of newsletters and blogs, or just Google SiteMinder top 12 channels, or contact SiteMinder and ask them for it. But it does float around the internet when they release it, and they do a lot of press releases around it.
Because I've seen some of those, but I guess my concern was, if you're not with SiteMinder as your thing, you can still get hold of that.
I've seen it on LinkedIn. I've seen it on, your newsletters that come out, like eHotelier and what is it? What's the yellow one? It comes out in all different means, so you can get hold of it even if you're not a SiteMinder customer.
Because that was my concern, was is it something where, and I guess the concern with a lot of people is am I kind of gonna get that out there? Now, it was interesting, you were talking a bit about that COVID-19 data and making sure that's in there. This is less a question than just a reiteration. Those of us who are lucky enough to live in New South Wales and were able to go to former MTR Playmate Bronwyn White's Travel Comeback Conference will have heard TripAdvisor talk about this. Now, they've noticed that they've introduced exactly the same thing on TripAdvisor, where you can put that data into your site when people are reading the reviews, and people can rate it as well. Now, they said in our region, only 3% of people had bothered to put that in their TripAdvisor thing. But here's the thing, the conversion rate for that 3% was 50% higher.
Yeah. So one of the things I hear from a lot of customers or a lot of hotels is, my clients, especially up in Queensland, my clients don't care about COVID. They're just traveling the same as normal. They don't care. And my comeback to that is, okay, the customers that are checking into your reception don't care, but what about all the clients that didn't book you?
Yes.
Which makes them stop and think. So another example, if you want some numbers around that, I have a client that's up in North Queensland. She picked up an 85 grand booking because she had a COVID statement on her website, and because when the booker rang her and said, can you send me your COVID certificate, she had it on file and she could send it within 2 seconds, and she picked up an 85 grand booking, which was it was something like about 10-15 room nights over 6 weeks with full meals, because she had that data to hand and she had taken the time to go through all the OTAs and update them. Now, I know you're not all going to get that sort of booking, but that's what happens. You've got the information, you give it to the customer and they will book you.
Well, I think let's turn it round, as you said, the other way around, which is, if you don't have that information, you're certainly not going to get that booking.
No.
So,
no.
And very much back to that idea when we brainstormed the title of this is, sometimes you'll get the $85,000, but right now that $10,950 from raising your price by $1, that you might get 5 extra customers because you've got that information out there. The other thing I wanted to pick up a little bit, we are over time, so if anyone needs to go, please go, but there's a couple of other things that have kind of come through. You spend a lot of emphasis on the talking to your staff, educating your staff, turning your frontline staff into salespeople. Tamie, I wonder if you'd just like to expand on that, because often I feel you're right. We see customers, we either, because they're very transient, we either don't invest in staff, or we see them as doing the customer experience, not as a way of, garnering extra dollars for us. So I wondered if you wanted to expand on that in any way. That's probably the last question I've had come into me so far. If there are any other questions, please do feel free to put them in now.
I think back on my own journey through the workforce of hotels, and I've worked in some big hotels all over the world. And it wasn't until I actually started my own business that I really began to understand a hotel as a business, because for so long it was rammed into us that we had to get good TripAdvisor reviews, that we had to smile at the customers when they were within 2 meters of us. We had to answer the phone in 3 rings, but it was never really explained to us, and we were never brought into the room, brought into the equation about the money side of it. So a hotel's a real business, and we need to be investing in our staff and explaining to them. And I suppose it goes back to the basics of even just explaining to them that if they send a customer from the phone back to an OTA, we just immediately lost 15% in commission. And do your staff even understand what that means? So maybe doing the numbers, like Carolyn, you just did the numbers for $1, is you do the numbers and you say, okay, so we're a 30-room property, we lose 15% on every booking. What does that mean at the end of the month and at the end of the year? Or we turn it around and we say to our staff, if you actually book, instead of the standard room, you book the next level up, we make $20 extra for the upgrade. And every $20 times 30 rooms times a whole year, this is what it means. But you need to bring your staff into that equation, and you need to incentivize them. And I know we all say they're paid to do a job, but everyone performs better when there's an incentive at the end of the day. And sometimes, I know this sounds a bit horrible, sometimes we need to treat our staff like our children or our toddlers, and we need to dangle little carrots in front of them and say, look, if you do that, you get this. So one of the most amusing exercises I did with my staff back in London, actually, and I had a team of 10, we had a meeting every day at 4 o'clock, and we discussed what was going on in the hotel. And I would have a packet of the mini chocolate bars in my drawer, and the person who had converted the best booking that day got a chocolate bar. It was a little tiny, one of the bite-sized chocolate bars. But oh my God, the competition for that free chocolate bar at 4 o'clock in the afternoon was fierce. You need to give your staff an understanding of why they're doing something and what's in it for them. How's this going to affect their life at the end of the day? Because it's a business. We want them to help make the business succeed.
Well, and I think some of those incentives can be soft ones, where you can say to people, look, we can have nice new beds, so you've got a better story to tell the customer. I mean, it's a different field, but years ago when I was, the first company I ran when I moved to Australia, we were a pretty small company, and I can safely say to you, in travel, you don't actually, travel consultants, oh, somebody's asked if they can unmute their audio. I'll come to that in a moment. But we didn't have huge profit margins on the top of our fees. So when I wanted to put a bonus scheme in place, in the end, one of my shareholders sat down and said to me, he said, Carolyn, the amount of money people are going to get if we do a bonus scheme based on revenue, which they can't control anyway, is not going to be much. He said, how about we do a super generous scheme on costs? So if we drove our costs for the business down, on any individual thing that you shared, 40% 40% of the saving went to that person.
Yep.
And it really changed people's decision making. So, for example, we had 2 suppliers, fieldwork suppliers. One was lovely but more expensive. The other was a pain in the neck, but very good at what they did and cheaper. So we would literally have a conversation. And, you know, occasionally the staff member who dealt with them would get off the phone and go, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? At the end of the day, they got $8,000 extra in their pay packet, and $8,000 pays for a few grumbly phone calls, I can tell you. So,
Exactly.
and it changed the strategic decision, and for the business, the shareholders were over the moon, because seriously, we took out 25% of our direct costs over a 2-year period.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, because there were a lot that staff didn't see a connection between where we bought the paper from, who we booked our fieldwork from. When we made that connection explicit, we still had to put things in place like quality checks. We made that connection explicit for them. They behave like business people. And so I definitely buy into what you're saying. Now, somebody was asking me if I could unmute them. So yes, I'm going to unmute you now. So you are ready to go. You can ask your question directly. Right? Would you like to ask your question? Nuang, I can't see you're not, I've unmuted you, but I can't hear you. So what I'm going to suggest is Tammie's email address is on the screen. If you would like to email me, my address is in the chat connection, and Tammie's is on the screen. If you would like to send me your question, I would be happy to do that. No one said thank you, but I'm not quite sure what we're going to do with that. So look, we're over time and we've taken so much of your time. So Tamie, thank you so much. As I say, my brain is slightly exploding. I'm probably going to have to go back and listen to this myself. God knows how we're going to get this into an infographic. But if you're an MTR member, everyone will get a listen to the recording. We will send you a link to the recording. But we will also have the slides up for MTR members. We'll be producing an infographic, which you'll get, and any of Tammie's customers are on the call as well will be getting. So that's you, Tracy. We're not quite sure why you're here because you're already getting all the benefits for all this great advice. Any of those, we will be getting those for you. But either of us are available for questions. And Tamie, thank you so much for that generous offer on the distribution audit. Give me the analytics to let me know how that goes. So I'm going to say thank you to everyone, because I know we're getting towards the end of the year and we are at peak webinar. So I do appreciate people taking the time to do this today. And we'll look forward to this. If you've got ideas for future webinars, we're listening too. We'd love to hear your ideas for any future webinars. So thank you very much. And I'm going to end the webinar now. Bye-bye.